It is 2024, and if you want to read more classics this year, then this video is for you. 12 months, 12 themes, 2 classics a theme. Now, of course, I will not be reviewing all of these 24 recommendations in length, because then this video would be over an hour. Instead, I will be linking all of the books I talk about down below in the description box, so you can have a look for yourself. 24 classics, this intro has been way too long already, let's go. January for me is always a bit of a gloomy month. The sparkle of Christmas has died down and we're stuck with the dark grey weather. So for this month I'm going with some darker, gloomier books that explore the depths of mental illness. And the first is, of course, The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. The Bell Jar is an extremely well-written, harrowing tale of a woman who is slowly losing it. She has everything going for her, yet she breaks down. This book is an exploration of all of the darker corners of the mind, and it is absolutely beautiful. The second exploration of mental illness and madness even is The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. This is a story of a man, a doctor, a husband who diagnoses his own wife to be of the hysterical tendency after the childbirth of their first child. Now, for her own good, she is secluded in a room in an old house, a room with yellow wallpaper, a former nursery, and she is forbidden to do any work, to have any interactions with the outside world, and she slowly turns insane. In a bit of a private journal, she records her obsession with the room with the peeling old yellow wallpaper, the patterns it has, and it is a whole descent into madness. It is a condemnation of patriarchy and a ever so well-written descent into insanity. February is, of course, Black History Month, and there are so many great authors to choose from. Now, I've whittled it down to 2 choices, but just go out there, Google it, because there are many, many more. Of course, James Baldwin is one of my own favorite modern classic writers, so he had to be in this list. Both Giovanni's Room and If Beale Street Could Talk are examples of some of the best modern classics out there. Now, for this selection, however, I went with The Fire Next Time. This bestseller from 1963 is the voice of the American civil rights movement. It consists of 2 letters, 2 little essays, 2 little novellas, if you wish, that explore racism in America back then and today. The writing is rooted in his own experience while living in Harlem, and this is one of those classics that is hardly ever known, ever mentioned, and should get far more love. Now, the second one for this month is another well-known classic. It is one of the favorite books of Barack Obama, and it is one that everyone should read. Now, I will say, and I say this very carefully because I know there are a lot of die-hard Maya Angelou fans amongst you, but this book doesn't really age that well all the time, but still, it is a masterpiece. I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings is a debut memoir. It is the story of a young girl who is sent to her grandmother somewhere down deep south in the US to become a young woman. It is a story of loneliness, it is a story of loss of innocence, it is a story of how children experience the harsh reality of racism and bigotry. Yet it is also a story of hope, of developing a strong spirit, of finding love for yourself, for others, for books even, and not allowing yourself to remain caged. I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou, an absolute classic for this Black History Month. Now, I don't know about you, but for me March brings that spring's promise. So I selected 2 books about going out in nature, in the garden, in spring. And of course the first is The Secret Garden by Frances Burnett. This is the story of a young girl, Mary, who is recently orphaned but a bit spoiled, ill-tempered, you know, that kind of child. And she's sent out into the countryside to live in this house where she slowly starts exploring the house and the garden. Out of boredom, she follows a robin and discovers a secret garden. And in this secret garden she starts to develop, she starts to change, and it is an absolutely beautiful story. It is a charming journey, it is an absolutely adorable story, and I love it. So first one up for this springtime month is The Secret Garden by Frances Burnett. Now the second book knew a bit of a hype at the beginning of the 20th century, and it is Elizabeth and Her German Garden by Elisabeth von Arnim. This book is a bit of a diary by the author herself, who acquires a garden, would love to go out and start gardening, and knows absolutely nothing about it. This is a book about the beauty of nature, but also about the frequent and terrible mistakes this novice gardener makes. It is a very adorable story, it is very cozy, it is very suited for springtime. So Elizabeth and Her German Garden, if you don't know this one, it is a very short book, it's a bit of a novella, so do absolutely give this one a try. April Fools. So who better to choose than the royal jester himself, that is Oscar Wilde. Now the importance of being earnest is best known as a play, but it can also be read as a book. It is a farce with mistaken identities, secret engagements, almost slapstick at moments, and the very witty and sharp language that we know Oscar Wilde for. It has all of his wit, it has elaborate plot twists and everything you could wish for in a very funny book to read. The Importance of Being Earnest by Oscar Wilde as our first April Fools. Now the second one is again one of those hidden gems, a bit of a dark horse, but I enjoyed it very much. It is Three Men on a Boat, and let's not mention the dog, by Jerome K. Jerome. Three Men in a Boat is the story of three men in a boat. One day they decide they are overworked to take a little rowing boat and venture out on the Thames. And of course this is where everything goes wrong. They fall into the river, they get lost, and they have very funny one-line type of conversations amongst themselves. Three Men in a Boat, to say nothing of the dog. Very funny Victorian literature. May is of course Asian Heritage Month, so we are venturing east for this one. And the first recommendation for this month is Schoolgirl by Osamu Dazai, a 1939 novella that depicts the day in the life of a schoolgirl in Japan. This book is an excellently written testament of the changes that Japan went through in that period. The old country is dying, there is this new struggle between them and I as an individual, and Dazai proves to be one of the best Japanese authors of the 20th century. The language is rich, imaginative, ironic, and you should absolutely give this one a try. Schoolgirl by Osamu Dazai. Now the second recommendation, this is a classic. It predates Homer. It is one of the oldest epics that we know, and it is of course the Epic of Gilgamesh. It is the story of Gilgamesh, the king of Uruk, who ventures out to the end of the world alongside the wild man Enkidu to find the secret of immortality. It is one of those epic mythological stories that has shaped the way how we look at books today. Just like the Iliad and Beowulf, this is one of those books, one of those stories that you absolutely have to read at least once in your life. The Epic of Gilgamesh, and we don't know who wrote it, as our second recommendation for Asian Heritage Month. Now, in June, it all kicks off. Summer's here, so we have to pick two summery books. And the first one is very well loved. It is of course Anne of the Green Gables by Lucy Montgomery. We all know this story of this feisty red-headed girl who is adopted by an elderly couple who actually wanted a boy, and it is one of the most summery feel books for me. It is that endless summer on the farm, it is a story of friendship, of love, of coming of age, and it is adorable. Anne of Green Gables is a wonderful timepiece. It is a portrait of a family, of a place, and it is excellent to read in summer. Our second recommendation is again all about summer, but it is a whole different beast of a book. It is of course To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf, one of my favorite authors of all times. It is the story of the Ramsay family who decide to spend their summer at their summer house on the Isle of Skye. Yes, they want to visit the lighthouse, although they will keep postponing it, and it is an excellent example of stream of consciousness. It is a masterful exploration of how families worked in the late 20s and how the relationships between man and woman are always modeled. The world is changing, everything is crumbling, and the Ramsey family want to visit the lighthouse. Virginia Woolf at her best. Now for July I wanted to go for beach reads, but make them classic. Easy, light reads that you can read by the side of a swimming pool. And the first one is Excellent Women by Barbara Pym. Excellent Women is a comedy about Mildred, and Mildred is one of those excellent women. She's supportive, you don't hear too much of her, she doesn't voice her own opinions, and she is very much situated in the background. Now, of course, the new neighbors are very different, and this is where things start to change. This is a very funny novel about how lives can be different. How people want you to act one way, but you desire to do so in another way. Yes, it is historical fiction, but it is still very recognizable today. I challenge you to read this novel and then look at your own relationship with your family and your neighbors. Excellent Women by Barbara Pym as our first classical beach read. And since we're halfway through the year and we didn't have any real murder mysteries yet, the second beach read for this month is Midsummer Mysteries, Tales from the Queen of Mystery herself, Agatha Christie. These seasonal collections of Agatha Christie stories are absolutely something I adore. It has Poirot, it has Marple, it has Harley Quinn, it has something for everyone. And of course, when it is about holidays and traveling, Agatha Christie is at her best. So pull up a deck chair on your cruise ship, because Midsummer Mysteries are indeed some of the best tales from the Queen of Mystery herself. And then we have August, with its long and almost sensual summer nights, so it is time for a bit of poetry. We go all the way back to the 13th century for a poet who is actually still very much read and loved today. It is a Sumi mystic Rumi, and you will find this quote on all of those kind of posters. If you're new to Rumi, I would absolutely suggest you go for a collection of essential Rumi poems, because his language is musical, it is ecstatic, it is beautiful, it is rhythmical, it is everything. He explores mysticism, he explores philosophy, and he explores all aspects of life. It is ancient poetry, and it still feels very today. As for our second selection, I would go with my own favorite poet, the Portuguese Fernando Pessoa. Again, I would go with a collection of Pessoa poems, because the thing about Pessoa is that he created different identities through his life, and each identity had a different kind of poetry. A different voice, if you wish. So experiencing Pessoa is experiencing different personalities, different identities, and different kinds of poems. There is no one who could put the inexplicable feeling of saudade in words, but if someone could come close, it was Pessoa. So if you want some classical poetry in your year, why not travel to the ancient streets of Lisbon? It is September already, and of course it is back to school. So why not highlight 2 children's books that could absolutely be enjoyed by adults as well? Now, of course, I don't need to introduce Roald Dahl. We all know him from The Big Friendly Giant, The Witches, and those are not the books I'm going for today. I'm going for my own all-time favorite by Roald Dahl, and it is Danny, the Champion of the World. It is the heartwarming story of a young boy who tags along with his father when he goes out to poach pheasants. And in my opinion, there is not a story that tells the bond between a father and his son in a more beautiful and heartwarming way than this one. Danny, the Champion of the World is essential Roald Dahl for me, and if you haven't read it, by all means, go out and give it a try. As for our second recommendation, again, no introductions are needed. We all know the yellow bear with his red t-shirt and no pants. It is Winnie the Pooh by A.A. Milne. Again, this story needs no introduction, but did you know that the stories of Winnie the Pooh are also an exploration of Taoism? There is so much wisdom to be found in these books that I absolutely urge every adult to reread them. And in fact, if I have one recommendation for all adults, it is to read more children's books. Because I promise you, you will be surprised of the profound wisdom and insight you can find in those seemingly silly books. And of course, October is the month for spooky reads. Now, as our first recommendation, I would pitch the short stories of Richard Matheson. We of course best know this author for I Am Legend, which later on became a very good film. But his short stories are very filmesque too. They have that feeling of a good old slasher and horror movie, and I absolutely love them. They are ideal for a short or quick read that still delivers on that spooky punch. He's the author that went on to inspire others like, let's say, Stephen King, and has written ever so many screenplays for television series and films. Richard Matheson as our first spooky recommendation. As for our second, well, this classic again needs no introduction. It is Bram Stoker's Dracula. And yes, I could have gone with Frankenstein, I could have gone with Jekyll and Hyde, but there is this very interesting thing about Bram Stoker's Dracula. And that is that Bram Stoker himself wasn't entirely sure he was writing fiction. Bram Stoker himself lived on the British coast side. A coastal side that was very often in winter plagued by dire storms and ships that went under. It is also the place of an ancient monastery that is said to be haunted. It is a place of superstition, old folk stories and things that go bump into the night. Connect the dots and you have the framework for Dracula, a story that Bram Stoker himself actually somewhat believed in. Now, apart from that, of course, it is still the quintessential vampire story. Very atmospheric, but also very heroic. It has some excellent characters and it demands a reread. So why not revisit this classical spooky story in October this year? Remember the 5th of November, because this month we are going for Revolution. And again, I could have gone with so many books, but I had to whittle it down to two. And the first is again a classic. It is Animal Farm by George Orwell. Yes, this is a banned book in many places on the accounts of them saying George Orwell was a communist, and to those people I ask, have you even read this book? Yes, it is an allegory of the rise of communism, but also of its downfall. Yes, the animals topple their human masters only to become enchained by their own kind again. I still think that Animal Farm is a modern classic fable that anyone should read at least once in their life. And take from it what you will, because there is much to find in this well-loved book. And it even gets more dystopian in our second selection for today. And again, one of my all-time favorite books. It is Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. It is the story of a firefighter whose task it is to go out and collect the very illegal books and burn them. Books contain ideas, and we all know that ideas tend to get a bit dangerous. So we burn them all, and we never question it. Ever. Until the moment we get a young woman as a new neighbor and she starts to change the way how we look at the world. This is not a book about an authoritarian government. No, this is a book about the things that people do to themselves to keep them chained. Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury contains one of my greatest fears today, and you should absolutely read it. Welcome in December, and it is winter again, so I went for two wintry feel books. And the first one is a big one. My own version, that is to be found somewhere here, contains almost 1,000 pages. It is a book that scares a lot of people, and it shouldn't. It is Anna Karenina by Tolstoy. This is an historical fictive story about the lives in Russia in the 19th century. It is a story of love, of friendship, of religion, of trying to change things, and then things don't turn out as you expected. Yes, it is an absolute brick of a book, but don't let that intimidate you. Because I promise once you get into the story, it reads like a soap series. Yes, it has that excellent, typically Russian literature, everything goes to hell feeling, but it won't leave you depressed when finishing it. So why not cozy up with a hot drink and enjoy Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. And the next one and our last recommendation for today is perhaps the best Christmas book that was ever written. No, it is not A Christmas Carol, but it is Little Women by Louise May Alcott. This is a story of the 4 March sisters who have fallen into hardship. Their father is away fighting in the war and things have become a bit difficult for them. But despite this hardship, they enjoy and enrich each other's company. They play music, they play games, they have shenanigans, and they have a merry jolly good Christmas time. It is a classic family story that everyone can enjoy, and it has this Christmassy feeling that will have you tingling with warmth and love. So it is Christmas once again with Little Women by Louise May Alcott. These are my 24 for 2024. And now I want to hear from you. Which books did I miss? Or did I pitch perhaps one of your own absolute favorites? Let me know down below in the comments and we'll talk classical literature some more. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, why not give a like, do comment, do subscribe, because those are the things that actually help the channel. And if you don't know what to comment, why not comment a stack of books emoji, because 24 books is quite a lot. Again, thank you for watching, and in the meantime, if you need some more bookish recommendations, you can always go here.